please just go ahead and introduce yourself, kind of tell us who you are, and maybe kind of like talk about your identity, or maybe how you think about your identity, how you construct your own identity. Kind of tell us, who is Chris?
Okay, well, I'm Chris Quintana Christian. I am 20 years old. I'm from Southern California. My parents are Mexican, born straight up in Mexico, so, you know, grew up in a very Mexican household.
So can you describe how your identity maybe differentiates you from the other boys in your family, or kind of if you've ever felt separated somehow from other members based on kind of your identity?
I think since like a young age, I've always felt kind of different from all my cousins. You know, there was always like a big age gap between us, and so I immediately felt that even within my older brother. But on top of that, I mean, just being like gay. At first, like I was like, oh, it's because like I'm just so much younger. But as I got older, I was like, okay, like this is what kind of like separates me from the rest of my, you know, boy members of my family.
So can you tell us what your idea of what the LGBT community is, or can you kind of share with a viewer, maybe like a straight person who doesn't know, kind of what is the LGBT community, and kind of what is your perception of it?
I guess to me it's a group of like people who kind of identify with similar qualities in the sense that you are not in fitting in a hegemonic like standpoint, you know, like you're not a cisgender straight person.
So are you religious, or do you practice any religion, maybe kind of like yourself? And I guess how has that kind of affected your relationship with your family, maybe by practicing or not, or can you kind of describe for us a little bit about it?
I've always struggled with like religion for the same reason of I grew up with it and I went to church since I was young. It's very important to a lot of my family, you know, especially my grandma. Always trying to go to church with her. My mom is very religious. My dad less so and is more lenient and would say if we didn't want to go, we didn't have to. But as I got older and I was thinking more and realizing more, I was like, okay, I'm like gay, and like I know Catholicism has very conservative and strict views, and you know, there's people who necessarily don't agree with it, but I originally was trying to be very religious because I was like not very accepting of myself. But then as I got older, I was like, you know what, like I don't need to do this or prove anything to myself, so I wouldn't, I think, say I'm not religious, but I don't necessarily follow anything super strict or closely, but I definitely believe in like a higher up spiritual being, and maybe that's just because it's comforting, but I wouldn't identify with any specific religion.
So how has your understanding of your culture and your experience kind of gotten to where you are today? How has your kind of identity, all of the things that have happened in your life, how have those kind of gotten to where you are as the person you are today?
I feel like I've always identified as myself. Primarily, the biggest thing I think that I describe myself as is Mexican, and that's because my family, you know, like is Mexican, obviously. So my parents don't really speak English, so I always had to speak Spanish at home, but it was always kind of a struggle because I grew up in Orange County in like a very like white area. So going to school, it's like I kind of had a battle like between like, all right, like I have to speak English and be like follow this very like white type of manner in school wise, and then go home and live a very Mexican lifestyle. So it was, I feel like, kind of hard to always grow up because it was difficult to see what I identified with the most, and even just hearing like from my own cousins, saying like that I was like whiter, and I mean I can't help that if I was born here and was exposed to that at school, and so yeah.
So do you think that you and these people at school were maybe closer than your other family, and that's what caused maybe some of this resentment?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was always closer with my friends from school because, I mean, they were just closer in age, and I saw them more. My family lived close, but not close enough where I would see them all the time. And even when I did, like, just the big age gap between us, I was just closer with my friends, so I always had that sort of side, their advice, their mannerisms, because I got it from these people instead of my family, and so I experienced that definitely.
About your family's view on the LGBT community, kind of how does your family, maybe your immediate family, extended family, whether it be, what are their kind of thoughts on the queer community, the LGBT community, the gay community, and kind of what's going on within it?
I would say it's just kind of split, like the younger generation and amongst all my cousins, and I have a very large family. My cousins are obviously more open-minded and accepting just because they're younger, and most of us grew up here, so we were exposed to that type of thing. And amongst the older generation, I would say it's kind of split. Like, most people are like, yeah, oh, we're accepting, but, they're still Catholic, and that goes with, like, being Mexican. It's just ingrained in their heads and in their way of thinking, so it's kind of harder, I think, to persuade them to think otherwise. But I think as my generation and all my cousins grow older and have more of a voice within our family, they're becoming more open-minded and accepting.
Are there any other queer people in your family?
Not that I know of. I have a feeling that one of my younger cousins is, but I don't know, she just reminds me a lot of like how I acted and how I was when I was her age. And like she's in like a similar place where like of like an age gap, so I don't know. Currently, not that I know of.
Do you think you can blend your cultural identity from your Mexican identity and your kind of cultural identity within your queer identity together? Or how do you kind of navigate that dichotomy? Do you think you can be a Mexican queer, or are those somehow two different or somehow mutually exclusive things?
I think in general, yeah, but I think it would just depend on the family. Within my family, I think sometimes it is hard because I'm not out to my parents, and it's just kind of always weird because I think within, maybe it's just my family, and I personally think it's within just Mexican culture, it's always to be kind of more manly in that sense. So it's just kind of weird to somehow still fit in that role, in that sense of being a Mexican in that sense, and then as well also being gay and trying to blend the two. But I think there is like a place, but it would just depend on like your surroundings.
So do you think it is more difficult to bring maybe parts of your gay identity into your kind of traditionally Mexican kind of culture, or do you think it is more difficult to bring some of your cultural traditions into the gay community?
I think it's both. I think it's kind of hard to bring either one into the other one. You know, there's certain things, you know, in Mexican culture that I think, you know, maybe other gay men of not Mexican or Latin sort of identity would understand, maybe just mannerisms wise or even food wise, and just vice versa. Not Mexican not understanding things that gay men do, but in a general sense. So yeah.
So what would you want to say to other people in the LGBT community who maybe have more social privileges? Maybe these kind of white, wealthy gays who we get this homonormative platform for like marriage equality, kind of all these things. What would you want to say to people like that? Or maybe what would you want them to hear?
I don't know. I think there's a lot that I would want to say. I think it's kind of hard to, in general, just kind of make them understand and see beyond just their kind of, in a way, tunnel vision of goals that they want to reach, that there's like a lot more going on outside of the world, of their own little bubble outside in different countries where, like, you know, people are dying, and here people are just focusing on marriage equality, and it's just like, that's great, and it's, you know, a great milestone, but there's, you know, more important things and better things, I think, to focus on.
What advice do you have to your younger self? Or maybe to the next kid kind of going through your same position or your same experience? What advice do you have for them?
I would say to tell yourself that you are enough, that you kind of don't need to prove yourself to anybody or try to mold yourself into something that you've seen on TV, that you've been told what to be or how to act, that you as yourself are enough as a human being, as a person.